Now, followers of my channel may wonder why I haven't made a video so far on the conflict in Nagorno Karabakh. Um, Really, the reason for that, this has been going on now for about 2 weeks, coming up to 2 weeks, is because I feel it's one of those conflicts that is just so deeply entrenched at a communal level that I wasn't sure really what angle to take with it. Um, and I'm still not entirely sure of that. I'm not on either side. I'm not ideologically particularly sympathetic to one side over the other because I don't feel informed enough to be of that persuasion to sort of say, oh, I think they're right and they're wrong. Very few conflicts are black and white. Um, this is a region of the world, the Caucasus, that has a lot of tragedy going way, way back. Um, and there's been several bloody wars in that region. The two Chechen wars, of course, the various conflicts in the Georgian Republic, South Ossetia, and of course in Nagorno-Karabakh. A little bit of history. After the First World War, there was a conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan. It kind of overlapped with the Caucasus campaign, but that was a significant war, and it involved a British contingent called Dunster Force, named after Sir Dunsterville, I believe his name was. So this is not a new thing, and it goes back well beyond that. And this is one of the biggest problems with these sort of conflicts. You get it in other parts of the world, of course. 20 years ago, there was a very bloody border war between Ethiopia and Eritrea, which cost at least 70,000 lives, up to 200,000 lives, fought between roughly 1998 and 2000. And there are other examples around the world, India and Pakistan, of course, and numerous other examples. So Armenia and Azerbaijan there's no way around it, they are pretty bitter enemies. And it's a very sad thing because it's a beautiful part of the world. Um, but like I say, an area with a tragic history. In recent years, with the disintegration of the Soviet Union, there was war of 1988 to 1994, which may have cost up to 30,000 lives. Um, and then there's been clashes subsequently since 2014, 2016, 2018, and the recent fighting is the most serious since the 1990s war. Um, Casualties with these things are always controversial because there's going to be claims and counterclaims. Each side is going to minimize their own casualties and maximize the opposition casualties, at least military casualties, whilst both sides could exacerbate civilian casualties. So the truth is, it's very, very difficult for outsiders to be absolutely sure about this. I think it's plausible, though, given the extent of fighting in recent days. The figure that's been circulated of around 1,000 dead all around, military and civilian, is probably about right, unfortunately. Some figures go up to 6,000. I don't think it's that high. Of course, there's no way to know. Um, but it's a very sad thing. The BBC had a report on an Azeri man who lost five members of his family. His apartment was shelled, and five members of his family. Um, that was on the BBC report by Orla Guerin. But then Deutsche Welle had a report, and it was exactly the same on the other side. An Armenian family had lost their loved ones. So the problem with a ceasefire in these sort of circumstances is I think it's all very well for those of us on the outside saying, oh, why don't they just bury the hatchet and get into the modern era? But when you've lost members of your family, it's frankly human nature that there's going to be bitterness there. There's going to be, I don't think it's realistic to say, oh, well, let's just forgive and move on. There's going to be very strong feelings on both sides because civilians have died on both sides. And this does run the risk, of course, of turning into a proxy war between Turkey and Russia. Turkey supporting Baku and Russia supporting Yerevan. Um, but I think it's very obvious that a military escalation isn't going to solve this. I mean, as it stands, Nagorno Karabakh is internationally recognized as part of Azerbaijan, but ethnically it is Armenian. So Armenia, I assume, is going to have an issue of protecting their people, their ethnic Armenians. I think Azerbaijan would need to make guarantees that ethnic Armenians are safe under its jurisdiction. Um, but honestly, I don't think this is a situation where you can say one side is all right and the other side's all wrong. I really don't think it's that simple. Most conflicts aren't. Um, but I do think both governments. It's one thing the communal hatred being among a significant portion of the population because, like I say, it's so deeply entrenched. But the governments need to be responsible and not escalate this situation. Otherwise, it could turn into a full-on war on the scale of that in the 1990s. Most likely say up to 30,000 people died. It's bad enough as it stands. Um, I'm not sure how much of an appetite Russia will have because right now there's a crisis in Belarus. There's also been protests in Kyrgyzstan, which no doubt Russia will be interested in. Russia's a powerful country, but even Putin isn't going to necessarily want to get involved in wars that just add baggage to Russia's agenda. Turkey, I'm not so sure about. I think Erdogan has existential interest in the region. Not that I side with Putin, by the way. I just want to be clear about that. But I just think that Erdogan in Turkey possibly has more leeway to get involved in this conflict than Russia does, possibly. Um, but all those countries that might be arming one side or the other, apparently Israel's been arming Azerbaijan while voicing support for Armenia. That's wrong. A military solution isn't going to help this situation. And as always with these sort of conflicts, civilians pay the price. Unfortunately, I can't see anything else but a ceasefire. Um, I come from a part of the world, Northern Ireland, that knows something of communal violence. And whilst I personally never directly experienced that, Northern Ireland's a small place, so I know what that sort of long-term communal hatred is like. In the case of Northern Ireland, of course, it was between the nationalist and unionist communities, the Catholic and Protestant communities. And in this part of the world, it's also deeply entrenched. So I think the only solution to this is for the major powers, in this case Turkey and Russia, to really, really get in there and do what they can to um, to de-escalate the situation. And I'm not sure if Turkey is doing that. Don't know about Russia. Um, but I don't blame people on either side for feeling anger. I think it's all very well for outsiders to say, "Oh, they're backward. They have a warlike mentality." I saw someone write a comment in one video saying, "How can you help refugees with a warlike mentality?" Well, I understand the point, but if your whole family had been killed, you'd be bitter and angry too. You'd probably want revenge. It's not. It's not going to cause a solution to this, but it's understandable. So, this is why it's so important to de-escalate the situation because the more this goes on, the more civilians die and the more deeply entrenched that bitterness will be. It's just a very sad situation. But if you're Azeri or Armenian, I'm not taking sides. I'm not saying your side is right or wrong. I'm an outside observer here. But I do come from a part of the world where that sort of communal hatred, and I don't think that's an exaggeration. I think that's obvious, is deeply entrenched. And I just hope that violence at least can stop. There can be time for justice, there could be time for holding accountability, but the violence has to stop because if it doesn't, this will just escalate into a full-on war. And all that will do is, I mean, I would urge people in the region, just look around you, look at what's happened in Syria. That country is a graveyard. So de-escalation could be the only solution to this. And I think all the major powers, not just Russia and Turkey, but France, United States, this country, all the major powers need to really say, rein in on both sides and say this has to de-escalate. And a big part of that is if the major powers don't fund arms to either side or the other, because that will just fuel the fire.